Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. I'm coming to you live from Durham once again this week, and I'm excited to bring to you my guest right here, Chef Asantewaa. I said it just before we got on the show.
I know.
Asantewaa. I did that wrong. Say it for me.
It's okay. Asantewaa lo-Liyong.
Asantewaa lo-Liyong. Yes, from San Antonio. Sorry about that. She is a chef and the founder of Food Horizons, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to fostering a world where people are deeply connected to their food, embrace sustainable practices, and celebrate the richness of diverse food cultures. Through forums, events, and publications, she explores and educates about how the food industry and its impact on the lives and our planet. So welcome, Chef. How are you?
Thank you, Tracy, for having me today. Really great to be here and share with your listeners.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And I'm so excited that our friend Jamie Gonzalez recommended you because you're on the San Antonio Food Policy Committee together. Is that right? Or work in conjunction with that, right?
Mhm. Yes, we work together in a lot of the food scenes, and I
Mm-hmm.
met her through the Food Policy Council, some of the events. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, today we're going to talk about with you the work that you're doing in San Antonio and around secret food stories and then what you think sustainable dining is. And, just before we got on the show, you said something about, well, I mean, I'm not the end all be all about sustainability, but even one step, means the world, can help a lot of different things. So can you talk about what you actually do with Food Horizons first?
Okay, thank you. That's a great question. So, I created Food Horizons because I wanted to bring all my work in under one umbrella. It's a
Mm-hmm.
nonprofit that highlights. What? Oh, it's a nonprofit that highlights the kind of food stories through written form, through our publications, through our events, and also through our forums.
Mm-hmm.
And Food Horizons is the vehicle to bring people together because I realize that just like you mentioned, I'm not the know it all, but I know that if I can create a space where people can meet and interact with each other, then it will make a difference. I'll be kind of adding my piece to the puzzle with regards to sustainability as a whole and food
Mm-hmm.
sustainability as well. So I'm doing my part by bringing people together, stakeholders, different, if it's a nonprofit, chefs, policymakers, academias, dietitians, and kind of having them interact with everyday people who care about food, who care about living a healthier life, and they want to improve their lives, right? And so I'm creating these spaces where they can interact and learn from each other. And most importantly, I want to create a space where you know that at the individual level, you have a role to play in food sustainability and health and wellness. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and the more we learn about it, the more we can all work together and collaborate in doing that. Um, you were born in South Sudan, right? And you
Mhm.
were, how was that influence? How long have you been? Well, let me ask this question. You were brought up in South Sudan, but you live in San Antonio. How long have you lived in San Antonio, and how does your um, upbringing in South Sudan influence what you're doing now?
So I've been in San Antonio for, I guess this year will be 9 years.
Okay.
Um, I've lived experiences in Sudan, South Sudan, and South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, how it's influenced my understanding is, or rather, my approach to food is always firstly, it has to be healthy. It has to be heavily vegetarian.
Okay.
It has to be also, we try to limit our waste, meaning finish all the food, of course, but I guess not over consuming, because sometimes you make more than you need and you end up throwing away a lot of food. So in our household, we're very we don't you have to kind of, I know some people see things differently, but we don't automatically like throw away food when it says sell by dates, expiry
Mm-hmm.
date, because it's not necessarily that the food is wasted or expired. And I know there are new laws that are trying to change how we label
Mm-hmm.
certain packaging on food so that people don't throw away food, because we might think we're doing the right thing, but we're actually adding to food waste. And we're also wasting our money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for us in our level, it's just the individual steps at home that we make through the cooking process, and even how we store and preserve our food so that we don't end up wasting. Yeah. And also, I really believe that it has to be delicious. I believe in healthy, but the first rule is if it's not delicious, I don't think anybody's gonna pursue a healthy, sustainable life if it's something that's not healthy, and also um, kind of doesn't make it easy for them to do it at
Right.
home,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
it's not too, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, because you don't want to eat something that you're like, ugh, right? You want to eat something that's tasty and that's going to want to bring you back to the table, right? And want to make you help
Yes,
you cook that. Um,
absolutely.
so what inspired you? So you last year you launched the Secret Food Stories initiative. So what
Mhm.
inspired you to do that? And what is the Secret Food Stories initiative?
Well, what inspired me was that so when I went to grad school at the Culinary Institute of America, I realized that I wanted to tell my own food stories inspired by my own upbringing.
Mm-hmm.
And I had thought of various ways to do it, like by creating a product. I thought of
Mm-hmm.
creating a supermarket, like a marketplace with African food items, specifically focusing on East Africa. And then I
Mm-hmm.
created a spice blend. And then I realized, I said, but I want to tell stories. And so one of the ways was I started by sharing my own recipes online,
Okay.
inspired by my own upbringing, because I'm like, how can I connect with people? And then building up, I realized I had a desire to create a festival where I bring together chefs, artists, have a panel discussion, a live band, kind of an exciting way to bring people together,
Mm-hmm.
So I said, I think the festival would be a good place to do that. And I still share information online, but now I'm focused on how can I do it in real life, because that's where the
Mm-hmm.
greatest impact will come. And that's what really spurred on the Secret Food Stories Festival. It's about food, culture, music, art in one place. Yeah.
Awesome. And how was that received? I mean, did people really like the different stories that were told about the food and beverage?
Oh my gosh, it was our first year. It was received well. We had 10 chefs and they created like food bites, small bites.
Mm-hmm.
Our theme
Mm-hmm.
was waste no more, so focusing on sustainability, and they made items with minimal waste. For example, one of the chefs did a watermelon. She used watermelon and made the rind into candy, watermelon juice, and I think she did another item. So it's kind of using everything, and the
Mm-hmm.
whole idea is showing our attendees that hey, you can do this at home. It's very easy
Mm-hmm.
to make. um, I made, for example, an orange olive cake that uses the whole orange.
Oh
And it's
wow.
almost something like a polenta, or almost gives you an idea of like a cornbread, something like that. It's very
Mm-hmm.
simple to make, but it's the whole orange, peels and everything. And so it's kind
Yeah.
of just showing people that, hey, you can do this. And we had a good reception. And I knew that this is something I wanted to continue doing. And we'll be doing it this year again. Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. So what in the work that you're doing, can you share a moment when you realized that what you were doing was really making an impact? And that's with Food Horizons that's with you working, with the food policy in San Antonio. I mean, what is that impact? What have you seen, with the food policy network as well, across the board, what you're doing?
I would say for me, it's seeing our attendees having this interaction with our panelists or our professionals, be it the chefs or
Hmm.
the doctors, policymakers, because they want that interaction to be able to improve on what they're doing already in their lives
Hmm.
regarding to wellness and sustainability. And so to have that interaction, I know that this is something that I have to continue improving on,
Hmm.
and continue expanding. And also to see the chefs so excited to share their creations and their art. For me,
Hmm.
really, it was all about that, the chefs, the artists, and just, it was like a show and tell, school day always. And I'm just so
Hmm.
excited to see that interaction, these chefs that are passionate. And then you have the just food enthusiasts coming together and saying, how did you do this? Where's your restaurant or where's your business? And they go out and support those businesses. And our chefs are always small businesses, mom
Okay.
and pop shops. So that really makes a difference in their lives and also our attendees.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that I've read about you is that you have this full this African philosophy, and tell me if I'm saying this correctly. Ubuntu,
Yes, Ubuntu.
Ubuntu. Can you explain
Yeah.
what that philosophy is and how it's shaped your approach to food as well as sustainability?
So Ubuntu is a South African word, and it literally just means I am, like, because of you. So it's kind of talking about how my existence is connected to you, you know?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm not just um, a solo, I don't know, just in the planet or in the, just floating by myself. There's a
Mm-hmm.
connection. I'm part, like we're talking earlier, I'm part of the puzzle, you're part of the puzzle, and we make the whole puzzle piece. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what Ubuntu is. And so I'm creating the space, and then we have all the other pieces coming together, the chefs, the artists, the policymakers, the doctors, the academia, and the attendees. Everybody has a part to play.
Mm-hmm.
I don't exist solely on my own, and neither do you. You created this platform and you're bringing people together and you're sharing with your listeners. So your listeners is allowing us to also continue having the space to share with them. So we're
Right.
all working together for a greater good. So that's basically Ubuntu. It's the togetherness. Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, I'm interested to know too, like you've got your food policy people are not, and maybe they don't even understand the role of food in policies, but how do you think that has helped shape their perspectives and the work that they do in government or, on the city level, on the state level?
Well, I think the way to help is, so we had our last panel discussion, we had somebody from Metro Health, and then we had a
Hmm.
chef, and then we had a community leader from Million Gardens. So everybody had their piece to place. And the funny thing is, some of them don't meet each other.
Hmm.
So having that interaction between somebody who's working in the city of San Antonio and some of the people who are doing the work on the ground, it's already creating this connection where they're able to say, oh, this is what's happening in that level. How can we connect with the chefs, so that we
Hmm.
can continue to implement going forward? So the city of San Antonio has a program called Provida, where they support small restaurants that are doing have healthy, affordable food, and they
Hmm.
give them a placard and they highlight them on their website. So that's already influencing their policy because they're seeing what the restaurants are doing and how they're adding it to their planning and programming as well. So it's just those small connections that they already
Hmm.
have, but we're still expanding their access to different key players in the city.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it helps both sides. I mean, it helps the policy makers understand what is happening with the farmers and the chefs and the diners, right? And what they need. And
Mm.
so the fact that you bring all of them together under one roof, have these conversations. How has not how has as a woman in the food and beverage space, because you haven't changed, how is the, you're a woman in the food and beverage space, how have you faced any barriers in the work that you're doing because you're a woman, and I'm going to say a Black woman as well, and how did you overcome them?
Wow. That's a good question. I think for me, I don't let anybody stop me from doing what I want to do, even if it's lack of funding, even if it's being overlooked or sidelined. Um, I just keep going because I feel like it's my calling, it's my duty. I was given this vision by God,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just a vessel putting it together. And it's been something in my heart for a while. And it's like that thing that keeps urging you. You know that you can't not do it,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't mean that because you're doing it, it's going to be easy and that you're going to be received with open arms on the first time, because some people don't know you, some people might not care to know you, and some people might already be supporting other initiatives. And so for me, I have learned to carve different community. So for example, the funniest thing is that the most welcoming people were the art community and the startup community in San Antonio. So I
Mm-hmm.
found a home in Gig, and I found a home. I'm actually a visual artist now. I created something last month to showcase somewhere and to also share my food story. So it's kind of
Nice.
interesting. Yes, I created clay food, like a charcuterie board, and then I had clay
Mhm.
food that I made. Um, and then I created a 40-inch round canvas. I'm just telling
Okay.
my life story. And then I created a food platter as well. So I had a charcuterie board with real food where people could taste my journey across my experiences around the world. So I would say that for me, the challenge is sometimes feeling not accepted, but still finding out that I might not be to your taste, but I know that there's someone out there that sees value and is willing to support me. And so I would say that to anybody. Don't be hard pressed on thinking your community has to be those people you in your industry. Um, it could be just anybody who wants to learn more and live a sustainable life, a healthier life, or whichever mission you have. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then it can also take you in a different tangent that you never even thought of, right? Like
Yes,
the work that you're
absolutely.
doing, you're meeting this person from wherever, and you're like, oh, I never thought about that. So it really, I like that philosophy. They just keep
Mhm.
trucking along because you never know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know sometimes,
Mm.
Yeah. Um, you recently, so let's go to your artwork that you said. You just showcased your artwork at the Ethnic Art Society Women's Exhibition. So
Yeah.
how does creativity play in your role of food and sustainability? I mean, did you like in what you did you use items that were going to be tossed or things like that? Or how do you think that's going to help progress you?
So what I do is a lot of times, and actually now that you brought it up, I get to think that I am actually doing a lot of sustainable um, things within my work that I don't pay attention. So the only thing I bought was the canvas and the glue.
Mhm. Oh,
Everything else
wow.
was materials I had at home. So it was a canvas inspired by tree rings, kind of which shows you like a tree trunk, and each ring represents a year of life.
Hmm.
And so I was telling my journey, but I use cloth, like a lot of my clothes at home that I no longer use. From I had to do some print for South Africa. I used some from South Sudan. So it was like this kind of ring with different materials that I found at home. And it's kind of
Hmm.
showing the different phases of my life. So basically, yeah, the only thing I spent money on was the canvas and the glue. And then for the clay work, obviously I bought the clay. And I also bought my wooden board from Goodwill. So I try to buy secondhand. Yeah, I try to buy secondhand items instead of buying new ones. And then I just use that in my art. So it's always looking for ways of how don't buy new and use what you have around the house. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is, I think, a big trend. I've read quite a bit of articles on the trend that, millennials and Gen Z are like, how can we use what we have versus going out and buying new, right? And I like that you did that, and using that to tell your story, and thinking through that, and in the food that you create as a chef, how does that, like, if you've got leftover beet tops or whatever, are you using those as well in doing some of the creations in your menus?
So when I was working the past job, I would actually use, like, I love making charcuterie boards, and I will use some of it for the decoration of the plate or something like that, like the peels and certain things. So I enjoyed adding that into the creation. And I recently learned, I know it was recent, but that's kind of crazy. Like when you make broccoli, don't throw away the stems. You can just chop them finely and add it to the stir fry. And I'm like, why haven't I been doing this? Because it's really delicious. So I don't throw anything from the broccoli anymore. So small little things that I'm applying to what I already know. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it tastes actually good because it's going to cook through. It's not going to stay hard. Just throw it in your stir fry. Or if you're doing it in the oven, it's another way of really just using everything.
The fact that you said broccoli, I actually watched a video yesterday of a chef using the broccoli stems to reduce, in a stir fry or in a salad, just chopping them up finely in sticks. And so it's funny that you said that, because it's like you don't think about the carrot tops that you're throwing away. How can you use that? And one of my friends, Lisa, told me 10 years ago, she made pesto out of those carrot tops. So you don't have to use lettuce or whatever. You can use whatever you've got in your refrigerator to come to something different.
And you can also dry some of them and make it into a powder. So last year, there's a chef I followed. I can't remember his name. Maybe I'll share with you later. And he would use everything to show you can make a sauce. You can make you can fry it, like deep fry it or air fry it, so it's crunchy. So you can also add that to your salads as toppings. So there's so many ways you can use everything. Powder, liquid, like you say, boil it, make it into a soup or something. It's just amazing what we can do. Yeah.
Right, exactly. What are the going back to the festival and the work that you're bringing the chefs and the farmers and the policymakers, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen or heard from these conversations, and how can what you're doing help to improve those or address those challenges, and what are the things that we can do as well from those challenges that you've heard?
As individuals?
As individuals, yeah.
As individuals, I would say that I think a lot of people assume that food sustainability is something beyond their reach, because it just seems so complicated. They think, oh, I have to have the composting bucket. What if I don't do it well? What if I don't have a garden? Some people don't. And what we're talking about earlier is, in your own capacity, you can make a difference by, for example, not buying more. Actually, it's through the food prep, I should say. So when I wanted to say not buying more, it's kind of buying what you need and cooking what you need versus what you think you need, Right. Because a lot of our waste comes in from overconsumption, or the idea that we need more than our body can sustain. And then we end up wasting the food. and then you put it in the fridge for a week because you don't want to throw it out, because you don't want to feel guilty about it, and then somebody else has to throw it out and it still gets thrown out. So it's just learning in our level individually at home. This is what I'm doing. Do I need this? Do I need to cook it? Do I need to heat everything? Because the more you overheat your food, also it gets bad. So how do we ensure that, okay, I just need for myself, I'm by myself alone. What can I use? I'll give an example. My sister was saying, so she has 2 kids and they're very young, right? So they're not going to eat a lot. And so she said she used to buy fresh tomatoes. And she's like, now I don't even buy a lot of fresh tomatoes because they'll go bad. So I'll buy the canned chopped tomatoes. And it's something so small, but it's like you noticing, like, I'm buying so much of this, and by the end of the week, it's going to waste. What can I do with it,
Right.
Or taking your fruits and making them, chopping them and freezing them for smoothies, so that the fruits don't go bad, or making your regular banana bread and so forth. But it's just learning those small things that we can make a difference, because you don't want to go shopping every day. We don't have the
Yeah.
time, right? So now we buy our
Right.
fruits and vegetables, and everybody's working, and we're not eating those fresh items as we should. So there's nothing wrong with buying canned or tinned, as people call it,
Right.
whether it's fruits or vegetables, and nothing wrong with buying frozen. So I used to not do it because I come from everything is fresh. We go to the shop
Yeah.
every day in South Sudan, and I would buy now frozen vegetables because I found out it's helping me eat my, just having a side veg every single day, and it's already chopped. So I will cook actually for the whole week sometimes, just stir fry some vegetables or put it in the oven. And my nieces will take that and add it to their stir fry. So I'm like, oh, hold on, this is actually working for them as well. Because now they can just whip up something healthy quickly,
Right.
and I don't have to worry. Yeah. So it's kind of those small things. And I'll have some fresh vegetables, but I'm now learning, okay, I don't want to waste. Because sometimes we forget, right? So you're still
Right.
getting your nutrients, but you're making conscious decisions.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I had a Huron juicer, that juices it, and then you've got the pulp that's left over.
Mhm.
And what do you do with that pulp? I put it in the refrigerator, and I would either put it in the juice in the Vitamix juicer
Oh,
the next day, or I would throw that on my salad.
oh,
Because I
that's
mean
great
it's
idea. I
fresh
haven't
pulp
tried
from
that.
those. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's a good way. I mean, or freeze it and use it to make stock, right? Because it's still that
Ah.
fresh vegetables. So that's one. I don't do that. I don't have that juicer anymore, but I love that when I did it. It was like, I don't want to waste this. It's good,
Mm.
mixture of things. Um, so what if you could fix one thing instantly in the global food system, what would it be?
Ooh, one thing. I would like to include the culinary influences of Black women in the food industry. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like their voices are not enough. I feel like the influence of Black culinarians in our industry is lacking. And the reason why is, so I went to culinary school. I worked with people who went to culinary school as well. And sometimes I'll notice something that I believe has an African influence. And that's only when I came here I realized that. I said, hey, you know what? This looks like a West African or an African dish from somewhere I can see. And they're like, no, this is from Puerto Rico, or this is from here. And I'm like, no, 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 this is African. I can tell you. And so I go do my research, because not everybody knows every history of every region, right? And then I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, so this came through the slave trade, or this came through this way. But when we're in culinary school, we don't teach people the full view, scope of that culinary world. So it's very
Mm-hmm.
French skew. Even in South Africa, where I studied, it's still very French skew. That's like the foundation. And so we
Mm-hmm.
don't get to see the influences of others that we
Yeah.
continue to use. And that was actually the heart of why Secret Food Story started. It's like, how can I bring those voices in and say, actually, you know what? Once again, we're all together in this, we're all different pieces of the puzzle, and everybody's puzzle piece is important, and their voices should be highlighted as well. So that's what I would do. I know
I
it
like
might not
that.
be related to sustainability, but it's still
Oh,
part of
no, I
sustainability
think
of
it's
stories, I guess.
yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
it's a story of resilience as well. I mean,
Mm,
it's 100% about sustainability, and I think that's an important because all the different stories that there are around food. I mean, if you think about where rice comes from, or where like we don't know. We just go to the grocery store and buy a banana. We don't know really
mm,
where what took who was the person that got that banana off the tree,
mm,
right? It wasn't Gilligan from
mm.
Gilligan's Island, right? Or did he get? I don't know if he took bananas down, but he took coconuts down for sure. But so no, I really like that, and it's where those influences came from because a lot of our culinary history came from Africa, right? It came
Mm,
from the people who came here as slaves and were cooking
mm,
and we don't realize that, right? So no, I love that.
mm.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
What your um what would be one piece of advice that you'd give someone who wants to use food as a tool for change in their own community?
Mm. I would tell them, I learned that start from your own story. I was
Mhm,
so scared to share my own story because I thought it wasn't worthy, or thinking that your food is not worthy enough. So it's learning to share your own, your own. You have to start from within and say, this is my story, and I'm telling it through food. Because food can
mhm,
tell you where people have been, right? Food can tell you also memories, connections, loved ones. And so I would tell them just start with yourself, share your story, share
mhm,
it through words, share it through food you create, share it by writing about it,
mhm.
and then bring
I love
others along the journey. Yeah.
I love that because you have to be authentic with you, right? And when you're
Mm.
authentic with you and the food that you have, it it tells an even greater story. So that's fantastic. Okay. Um, well, we just kind of talked about this, but people don't realize the deep cultural and historical significance behind the foods that we eat, like where they come from.
Mhm.
And when you're designing your events, how do you engage those chefs and those policymakers to bring out their own stories about their food and how to use the stories that about the food that they're making to help educate?
Well, the great thing about the festival is that you get to have interaction with the chefs. So we call them chef's table. So
Hmm.
attendees can go up to chefs and just talk and interact with them on their stories, What's like, what did you create? How did you create it? What inspired it? And chefs are really this exciting people. Like I can tell you, they just want to tell you, they're very proud of
Hmm.
their craft. And they're also mostly approachable. And so they can tell you why I'm doing this and this is what inspired it. And our chefs are always representative of our world, very diverse. And so you're going to find different cultures represented.
Hmm.
And every chef has a different, unique language because of obviously their upbringing. And so that comes out through that. And in our panel discussion, like one of our chefs will share like her upbringing and where she's born and how that relates to what she's doing. So it's always talking about, um, like you said, your authentic self.
Hmm.
I know sometimes we're told humility to be humble, like not to, you try to undermine the self.
Hmm.
Um, but I can, but when you're a creative person, you cannot hide that because it just comes along. Part of you will be in every dish you create.
Hmm.
So I'd say that's how probably they share.
Okay. No, that's awesome. Okay. So if you could, um, I think two more questions for we wrap up here. One is if you could design the perfect meal, I'm going to read this, make sure I read this correctly because I wrote it down, to represent your mission of sustainability, cultural connection, and community empowerment, what would be on the plate and why?
Okay, so that was a difficult one. I was like, how would I respond to this? Firstly, maybe to represent sustainability, I guess, would be the items I use. I would buy them
Mm-hmm.
secondhand, like my boards and my plates. Secondly, I'll take people through a journey. So I'll share with you the food I created for the art exhibition, which
Mm-hmm.
brings all cultural influence in my life together, but it
Mm-hmm.
relates to so many cultures that people don't know of. So, for example, I made a salad aswad, and salad aswad is an eggplant salad. Aswad means black in Arabic. So it's an eggplant salad we make with peanut butter, a bit of tomato paste, lime. Peanut butter is something we use in my tribe in South Sudan. The eggplant came in through also influences of the North Sudan, of the Arabs. But
Okay.
the peanut butter is significant to my culture. So this is a dish that was telling people like this is South Sudan, Sudan. And then I made a board with some tamia, which is like falafel. And it's a
Okay.
street, we eat it as street food in South Sudan. So the women will fry it at night and you just go on the street and you buy it. They put it in
Mm-hmm.
a baguette style bread
Mm-hmm.
or a hoagie with some chili and you eat it with feta cheese. It's so good and crunchy. So to a lot of people, falafel is Mediterranean, but they don't know that South Sudanese people also eat it. And then I added the feta cheese, cucumber, just a few things to show, hey, this is something actually that it's part of my culture, and some hummus as well. And then I took people to, now I'm like, okay, let me take you to South Africa. So I made a malva pudding, which is Malva. And it's a pudding almost like bread pudding, but it uses like vinegar, a bit of apricot jam, and you eat it with custard. And so some people
Okay.
relate to it as, oh, this tastes like bread pudding. So there's so much connections that come in, and I'm like, this is my story, but I can bet you everybody found something connected to them through that. And then I finally ended with some chocolate chip cookies, and I'm like, this is part of my American, thing with
Mm-hmm.
pecan signifying Texas. And then I made another cookie, chewy oatmeal with dried apricots and
Mm-hmm.
white chocolate and macadamia. The apricots still represent South Africa because a lot of people here don't put the apricots in their oatmeal cookies. But it was still like, hey, they make oatmeal cookies, but this is something else I added to it. So that would show my world to everybody that this is
Oh, that.
pieces of me. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. But I like all of that, and the oatmeal, like raisins, you switch in the cookies, switch out the raisins for the dried apricots. That makes complete sense. But I'm kind of confused about the eggplant and the peanut butter together.
Yes. Oh, you fry it actually. You fry the eggplant. I should have
Really,
said that. You fry the
those
eggplant,
don't
and then
go
you're
together in
gonna.
my eyes.
They go really well, and then you mash it, the
Uh
eggplant,
huh.
and then you add some like cumin, salt, pepper, a bit of garlic, and then some
Uh huh.
lime. Squeeze some fresh lime. So it's like a dip, actually. Yeah,
Okay. All right.
not too much
All
peanut
right.
butter, but it's this unique dip that I don't know how to explain what it would be. So it's almost like baba ganoush, but instead
Okay.
of yeah, yeah.
Okay. I thought you were like taking pieces of eggplant and dipping it
No,
in peanut butter, and I'm like,
I
no,
should I should have
that does
explained.
not sound good. I'm like, not that is not in my
I'm
daily
glad
routine.
I
Okay.
explained.
Oh my gosh. But I love how the fact that you like in that whole menu, right? You had pieces from each different place that you've lived, but then they're also connected in,
Mm,
even though they're on different continents, right? Or in different parts of one continent. Like they have the same,
mm,
there's connectors to it, whether it's a specific ingredient or whether it's the dish itself, the falafel and the baba ganoush kind of dish, right? So no, I love that.
mm.
Um, And I was not expecting you to say chocolate chip cookies. I was expecting you to say something Tex-Mexy, kind of, the
Uh,
salsas or something like that. But the
yes.
tortillas, the tortillas could be a falafel kind of version of that,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
pita bread. So I had some little
Hmm.
pita breads. So that's
Hmm.
again the connection. Different
Right,
cultures have flat breads. They call it different
right.
things, but it's still, yeah,
Oh, very
absolutely.
cool. Okay, so what um, because you're really focused on food waste, and this connection thing. My last question to you is, what is one simple thing? I mean, you kind of said some of this beforehand, but if what is a misconception that people have around food waste, and how can they, challenge that misconception and make that one or two steps to be that advocate around minimizing waste?
I would say do what you can at your level. So if you can't do
Hmm.
composting, find other ways to reduce your food waste. For example, it could be by how you prepare the food, like we mentioned about using all your broccoli pieces, including the
Hmm.
stalk, or it could be by just making sure that you buy what you need for the week and
Hmm.
making sure to find different ways that um, to avoid food waste. So instead of buying everything fresh and you're not going to eat it, maybe then you need to buy dry items, so frozen or canned, you know,
Hmm.
and use it as needed. And understanding that each of us at our individual level in our own homes, we we make a huge impact. Restaurants and food supply companies and so forth, they can also do their part, but we are as important as they are ensuring that we reduce the food waste and live sustainably. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you. Okay, so we had a bunch of people over here. My friend Lori Tenney. Hello, Lori. She just popped in on Instagram, and Rob Akins. And so we've got two people listening on Instagram. If anybody from Instagram has a question for Chef, please let me know. If you want to connect with Chef, this is your Instagram and your Facebook and your
Hmm.
website, basically, right? Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Yeah.
website is foodhorizons.us.
.us. Okay.
Yeah.
And then when are you going to do your Lori just says hi. When are you going to do the next Secret Food Stories Festival? Is that going to be in the fall?
Yes. So is it for October? So our next
October, yeah.
festival will be on October
Mm-hmm.
25th at Launch Essay from 6 to 9 p.m. And this
Okay.
year, our theme is chasing health. So we're looking at pursuing health and wellness. And you'll expect, once again, chefs creating minimal small bites related to
Mm-hmm.
chasing health and wellness and unique artworks by artists. And we'll have a panel discussion just looking forward on the future of food, chasing health and wellness. And the panel discussions have been are happening throughout the year. We have one in
Mm-hmm.
April and we'll have one in July. So you can check our website for updates if you're in San Antonio and join us for
Mm-hmm.
an evening with chefs, policymakers, academics around chasing health and wellness. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. So I just
So
put the
thank you
website
very
there.
much, Tracy. Before I forget, thank you for having me. And thank you,
Oh,
everybody, for joining us.
you're welcome. I'm so glad that you can join us. And Jamie, tell Jamie I said hello when you see her in person next.
Yes.
And everybody, I'm going to be back here tomorrow. I will be in Austin tomorrow. And I'm excited about that conversation as well. So, same time, same place, right here on all those social media platforms. And until then, stay safe and eat well. And, Chef, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you. And have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks.